And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of DappRadio. I'm your host, Ben, and we have the absolute honor of speaking with the ape himself, Mr. Julian from ApeSwap, head of BD. How's it going, my man?
It's going great, going great. Thanks for putting this together. Excited to be on.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing some time. So we have some massively cool news. The teams from our two projects here of ApeSwap and DappRadar have teamed up, and we have created a liquidity mining program together. We partnered together, and clearly we're the world's Dapp store. You are a leading decentralized exchange on BNB Chain, Polygon, and Ethereum. And we will, together in this collaboration, be bringing permanent protocol-owned liquidity for the native Radar token to BNB Chain while tapping into ApeSwap's innovative sustainable liquidity mining program. So that's a lot of buzzwords, a lot of really interesting sounding things. I want to understand what this is. But first, maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit, maybe talk about how you got to ApeSwap, how you got into crypto, and what you really do. And then we can hop into this partnership and break it down for the people.
Awesome. Sounds great, man. Yeah, excited to get into it. So my name is Julian. I am director of business development over at ApeSwap, and I've been in the crypto space since about 2017 or so, mostly learning and investing, and really, just soaking in all the information that I could for a very long time until eventually making the jump. Pretty much day one at ApeSwap. It's my first time working full time in crypto. And at that time, it made a lot of sense. I was looking to get into the crypto space through a more traditional side of things, looking to work with potential market makers or VCs. And at the time, I was very much living the degen lifestyle when it comes to farming, staking, kind of on Ethereum, and then moving on to Binance Smart Chain with PancakeSwap and all of that happening. And at that time, I learned about ApeSwap, started hopping in, and immediately, got in touch with the team and started giving them some advice and my thoughts on how we could progress from biz dev perspective. And the rest is kind of history. Been with the team ever since. We've scaled up now to about 38 full-time apes, which we're super excited about. The team has been growing really strong. And yeah, honestly, it's been a really great experience. We've bootstrapped ApeSwap from the ground up. It's a really fair launch project. We don't have any outside investments or capital. And again, it's been an awesome journey, kind of growing our community to about 250,000 monthly active users at the moment. And I think we just crossed over 200 partners, $17 billion in lifetime volume. And yeah, a little bit about my position itself. So I actually run BizDev alongside one of the co-founders named DK. And we've got a team of about 9 people on BizDev, and we work to source different deals and ideally get as many tokens listed on the exchange as possible. And then, of course, working on new and innovative products and getting as many partners as we can in these products. And obviously, DappRadar is one of our newest and greatest partners that we've gotten included in the sustainable liquidity mining stuff. So super excited about that. And I've been really hyped for the journey that we've been on and where we're going next.
I love that. Now, we have to clear up one thing because I know everybody is just absolutely they can't get this out of their minds, but does part of what you get paid to do, part of how you get paid, does that come in bananas or
Yeah, no, that's a great question. For a very long time, 100% of salary distributed to any core employees was banana. But in recent times, with kind of the bear market and everything, we've switched to stables so that we can preserve those valuable bananas as much as we can. We'll probably be switching that back on in the near future here. Hopefully, the markets can turn around in a favorable way.
Well, I'm glad we got that cleared up. I know that was on everybody's mind.
Oh, it's always fun introducing that to people. Telling them I work for a DeFi protocol and get paid in banana. Definitely gets a kick out of people.
I love that. And produce aside, let's hop into this partnership here. So first of all, we're talking about liquidity mining. We're talking about a new way to do it. We're talking about the partnership here. I'm just so curious because a lot of people have had they've either heard horror stories or they've had their own horror stories where they have started liquidity mining and it's a little bit complicated to figure out like what it is and then how to do it, and then they like get hit by impermanent loss or long term there's different factors or variables that play into where they don't make as much as they want to and they thought they were doing the right thing but they really didn't. So maybe we could start and build a foundation of like what is liquidity mining in the first place, and then let's talk about, as part of that, protocol owned liquidity versus rented liquidity.
Awesome. Yeah, this is now this is great. So yeah, taking it back to the beginning, essentially liquidity mining is, or at least was, a super innovative way in which different protocols could essentially incentivize liquidity or TVL in some form or another, whether it's for a decentralized exchange that would allow for trading, or if it's for a lending network that would obviously allow users to borrow and lend out their assets. Liquidity mining is a way for protocols to essentially gather up that liquidity and incentivize it. And they do so through essentially giving away their native token in exchange for users providing liquidity for a temporary period of time. So, as an example, on ApeSwap, currently we do this through what we call farms, where a user can provide, as an example, in the case of Radar, could provide Radar BNB liquidity in exchange for earning banana straight through one of our farms. And so this, obviously is an amazing way to bootstrap some initial liquidity for a project, or, has been used in the past in this way, though a lot of projects have turned it into a kind of de facto, this is the way we're getting liquidity for the long term, by allocating huge amounts of their tokenomics and of their reserve token allocations towards these liquidity mining incentive programs. So it's definitely been interesting to see, and again, was a very innovative way, initially, for projects to start bootstrapping these tokens. We saw a ton of growth across the board for the projects that did this. Their token blew up, they got a ton of TVL and things went really well. But of course, where things start to break down a little bit is the sustainability side of things, where, you can't really be giving away unlimited amounts of money forever. And of course, hope that the liquidity will stick if you're not giving away those funds. So that's I guess kind of a brief intro on liquidity mining programs themselves and how they work. But really today, they've gone from being innovative programs to really quickly becoming a problem in the industry, where again, all these projects are allocating large amounts of tokens towards these liquidity mining projects, but essentially getting nothing in return, as they're really fundamentally just renting this liquidity for a temporary period of time. And at the end of the day, the people who really win from these setups are really what we like to call mercenary farmers, or people who just come in, seeking the highest return that they could get for providing liquidity, and then quickly dumping those tokens as soon as they can, and then exiting their liquidity once there are no more rewards to be squeezed. So, this has a net negative effect on the project themselves, because they're giving away these tokens for free and not getting any long-term liquidity out of it. It also has a negative impact on the holders of those tokens, because obviously the mercenary farmers are coming in and dumping those rewards, which obviously causes the price of the token to decline, especially as liquidity is removed. There's less of a support for that price to kind of stabilize. And it's bad, obviously, for the DEX that a project could be working with. So in the case of ApeSwap, obviously, once those liquidity incentives dry up, the TVL goes with it, and obviously that's not super beneficial for us either. So it kind of creates this lose scenario where the only winner there again is the mercenary farmers. And yeah, so we've been trying to develop novel ways in which we can solve this problem. And Treasury bills kind of been the amazing product in which we're able to do so, and introduce kind of this concept of protocol-owned liquidity, which you briefly touched on there, which essentially will allow projects to build up their own sources of liquidity that they can own themselves, manage themselves, and obviously won't be pulled from the markets anytime soon, or obviously can remain within their control in that way.
So just to make sure that we're on the same page here. So liquidity mining is going on to some sort of exchange and saying, I want to put my tokens into this exchange pool. So in this case, we're talking about BNB and Radar. So we're saying I'm coming to ApeSwap and I want to I currently own a certain amount of BNB and a certain amount of Radar in equal proportion that I'm then putting into this pool. And now people who are trading these pairs are going to be using this exchange to trade, because that's what we do. And every time there is a trade, there's a small fee that's taken. Part of the fee goes different places, but part of that fee goes to the liquidity providers who have put up the BNB and Radar in order for people to be able to trade. And so the liquidity providers benefit in the form of getting a small portion of that transaction fee for providing the liquidity. But then what the additional incentives are on top of that sometimes come in the form of are maybe the exchange itself will contribute some tokens, some of their native tokens, or maybe the project itself will have like its own native reward program where those liquidity providers can then take those LP tokens that they get when they provide liquidity, and they can then stake those LP tokens, and they can earn additional rewards in the form of either the exchange tokens or the native project tokens. And so they're then incentivized to keep that liquidity there. And so that's kind of the idea of rewarding users for keeping their liquidity in, and for trying to incentivize people to keep that liquidity in there, so there's more liquidity to trade against, which is just better for the product as a whole. Where we saw issues in the past were, well, what happens if either the exchange token or the native project token? What happens when they're printing so many more of those tokens, or they're releasing so many more of those tokens in order to pay people for providing liquidity? That it becomes inflationary, and the value of those tokens goes down because they're printing so many tokens, and the liquidity providers were then grabbing those reward tokens and immediately dumping on the market, creating a tremendous amount of downward sell pressure, which drops the value of all of that. So that was creating problems. And so now we get to the solution, which is this idea of protocol-owned liquidity, which I'd love for us to explore more and understand the ApeSwap sustainable protocol-owned liquidity and sustainable treasury bill form. Maybe you can talk about the benefits of protocol-owned liquidity and how this solves this problem, and then how you're tackling that with your Jungle Bill sustainable program.
For sure. Yeah, most definitely. So essentially, the concept of protocol-owned liquidity is really allowing these projects to leverage these allocations that, again, they would otherwise utilize simply for liquidity mining incentive programs, and actually generate a tangible return on those allocations, and effectively, bring those back within the control of their treasury, and allowed them to, again, maintain a stronger, larger liquidity profile across decentralized exchanges, and of course, generate revenue from those trading fees themselves, which you mentioned there as well. So obviously, a very, very interesting concept there, especially when you're coming from this kind of typical idea of, okay, we're going to allocate, let's say, $200,000 worth of our native token in exchange for renting some temporary liquidity over the course of 3 to 6 months. But then again, after that 3 to 6 month period finishes, you're left with an effective $0 return on that initial investment. So that's where protocol-owned liquidity really becomes much more interesting, and obviously is clearly a much more sustainable approach to this, because after that 6 month approach, or a 6 month time, elapses, for example, on that same amount of money, you could end up with an actual return that's potentially in between 80 and 100% of what you'd initially put up in the form of protocol-owned liquidity. And of course, building over the long term, you could end up with significantly higher amounts of liquidity than what you could have otherwise rented through this program. So that's a bit on protocol-owned liquidity. And yeah, the way that we're introducing this and getting projects on board is through the Treasury Bills product, which we are super, super excited about. And again, especially excited to have DappRadar on board. So definitely excited to dig into that in a bit.
Totally. So just to touch on the benefits of protocol and liquidity, why this is so important. When the protocol itself holds the LP tokens by providing liquidity, then yes, it's a little bit more expensive for the protocol itself up front because you do have to be providing that liquidity. So you have to have that value that you're contributing to that the overall liquidity pool. But a protocol is not going to remove that and dump on the marketplace because it's not in its own best interest. So it's that's why it's called permanently backed protocol owned liquidity, because it's going to keep the liquidity in there and it wants to be generating the fees over time by being the liquidity provider that benefits from the trading fees, but it's not going to remove it. And so it has no incentive to remove it because it is benefiting itself by keeping it in there. So protocol owned liquidity is a little bit more expensive for the protocol itself on the front end because you have to have that initial liquidity to put into the pool. But in the long run, it will be significantly more sustainable as a tool to stabilize the price of the token, or at least prevent it from being dumped on because you're not going to dump on yourself type of thing. So that's just wanted to really hammer home the point of why protocol owned liquidity is so important and such a big piece of sustainability within a token's ecosystem or within a project's ecosystem as far as its own token goes. And so what I'm just fascinated by is the fact that you guys recognize this, and then you've now built this Jungle Bill Treasury Bill program. Would love to just understand, like, how exactly does it work, and how do we do it?
Awesome. Yeah, most definitely. So I guess the product can get a bit complex. So to approach it more from a high level, effectively what's happening is we're allowing projects to sell their native tokens at a slightly discounted rate along a bonding curve in exchange for acquiring LPs directly from users. And the LPs are then, as you mentioned, locked for a period of time, and then obviously maintained by the actual project that has sold their underlying tokens. And the underlying tokens themselves are actually vested to users over a period of time, which is, of course, adjustable by either us or the project getting involved in Treasury bills. So I think in the context, or in the case of DappRadar, we are currently working on a 14-day vesting period. Users are able to trade in liquidity tokens or in exchange for Radar that is a slightly discounted rate. That discount is currently determined by two factors, supply and demand and time decay. So essentially, as more time elapses and people are not purchasing the bills, the discount percentage increases. And then, of course, as users purchase the bills themselves, the discount decreases until it either becomes just zero, flat, or actually it could even go negative, allowing users to potentially purchase tokens at a premium. And you might ask, why would any user want to do that? And what's pretty cool and exciting actually about the product as well is that we've wrapped the positions that a user can take into an NFT. And so, what's really cool about that is in a product like this, if the position a user took was directly tied to their wallet address, they would be limited in what they could do with that capital once it's in that position, right? So if I'm vesting for 90 days on a token, I'm locked in for 90 days and not really able to do anything until that vesting period has elapsed. When it's wrapped in an NFT, what's really cool there is it actually becomes tradable, sellable, buyable, and people can potentially exit that position or even enter a position that somebody else had taken through an aftermarket. So super excited there. And of course, what's really cool is, we've worked with a really unique artist to put together some awesome characteristics for the NFT itself. A lot of throwbacks to kind of some traditional crypto events that have happened in the past, and some very popular crypto figures in the space. So we're super excited about the art of the NFTs themselves and kind of how they represent the underlying position of vested tokens. And at the moment, the way that the Treasury bills product is broken down, it's broken down between banana bills, which are effectively bills that we're selling using the banana token, ApeSwap's native token, and then jungle bills, which are effectively bills that are being sold through partner tokens. In this case, Radar, of course, is participating in jungle bills as well.
Yeah, that was a great explanation there. And so I'm kind of curious, when we're talking about using a unique NFT that represents the purchase token. So basically, we as users will go in and we'll provide liquidity for BNB and Radar. And so we go in and then we can then use those LP tokens to purchase this Radar jungle bill. And then each jungle bill, treasury bill is then a unique NFT that represents purchase tokens, which vest for 14 days. So in essence, you could say it's a yield generating NFT. Now, can you explain a little bit more and go a little bit more in depth on how this is a yield generating NFT? How long does it generate yield for? And is it in our best interest as users to hold these NFTs or to be doing something with the NFTs? Maybe you could just provide a little bit more clarity and drill down in that.
For sure. Yeah, great question. So essentially, they're yield-bearing NFTs in the sense that they, again, represent this underlying position of vested tokens. So it could be any of our partner tokens or banana tokens, and the NFT very clearly defines, what is the total payout of tokens, how long the vesting period will last, and when the effective final date is of the vesting period. So of course, any user who's looking to get involved in the bills product, either by providing LP tokens directly or by purchasing one of these bills that has already been, set in motion by another user. That kind of, allows a user to collect one of these NFTs, which of course, the art never goes away and it's a collectible in a sense, but also will be generating some yield through the Treasury bills product itself. So it's super interesting kind of concept there, and definitely a bit of a twist on, traditional kind of yield bearing NFTs as well.
That's really exciting. So this is pretty legendary, and I think this is actually bringing the whole space forward as far as just pure innovation. Can you just talk about, and I think we did a good job of tackling the actual partnership itself and what that looks like and how that's going to be super beneficial and important to the space. Maybe you could talk a bit about what this really does for us as a greater community, what this means for the space in general, the liquidity mining space, for the whole ecosystem, and because we're tapping into some really cool parts of DeFi functionality, and we're tying now in NFTs as well. So if we missed anything on the liquidity mining piece, let's tackle that, but then let's move into what does this actually mean for this space as a whole.
For sure. Yeah. And I think, I'd love to dial in specifically how this is going to be helpful for DappRadar as an example here, because, coming into things, I think one of the main points that was brought up in the conversations that we were having before kicking things off was, DappRadar was in exactly that position I mentioned a few times of, having this large budget of Radar tokens allocated towards traditional liquidity mining programs. And originally, part of the plan for those tokens was to kind of go through that more traditional path of giving away these tokens in exchange for rented liquidity, and effectively, again, the kind of end result of that, after let's say 2 to 3 years, would have been the effective loss of potentially millions of dollars in Radar tokens, for a return of very minimal actual liquidity or sticky liquidity. So through this, what we're really, I guess, most excited about is just a better alignment of incentives across the board between the exchange, us in this case providing this service, the project itself, and of course the holders of the underlying token as well, who again, were kind of really just getting dumped on effectively by mercenary farmers in the more traditional model there. So the way that this kind of, I guess, rejigs everything to again better align incentives and create a better win-win-win, and leave the mercenary farmers as the only losers there is, effectively through the Bills product, the people that are going to be purchasing the underlying tokens. So again, in this case, Radar, the people who are going to be purchasing those tokens at a slightly discounted rate are typically going to be your long-term believers, and people who want to support the project and make sure that they are providing any sort of value that they can to the project for the long term. So what you'll find is a lot of LP providers who don't have ill intentions and are not mercenary farmers, again, are typically hit by this idea of impermanent loss, or this concept of impermanent loss, and beyond that, end up kind of getting destroyed by mercenary farmers. So here they're able to still provide liquidity, but then exchange that liquidity for tokens at a slightly discounted rate, which again, kind of allows us to weed out the people who might have more ill intent, and so actually better provide rewards to the users that are providing long-term support. So there, better alignment of incentives there for the users themselves. As we mentioned, the project themselves get an actual return on these tokens that they would otherwise be getting, an effective $0 return on. In this case, I think Radar right now, we're close to a 90+% return on the current incentive spend there. So super, super exciting. And of course, we'll continue to monitor that as it progresses. But historically, I believe all of our other jungle bills have been at an average of 89%, I think is the current number, return on that investment. So far, things have been performing exceedingly well, and have really been kind of tying the loop of, again, better or aligning incentives amongst all the parties involved.
I love that. It makes me happy as somebody who has been building partnerships for a long time to see that we've come together and been able to actually deliver serious value through innovation, and we're taking care of the users first in a way that's a win for the underlying protocols as well. Like, to me, this is, like I said, a monstrously big step forward for the whole space, and I am just so excited about it.
Love to hear it, man. Yeah, and I mean exactly. That's part of why we're so excited. We've worked with so many projects in the past that, again, I mean, their teams were super high quality. They had great ideas, great vision, but they were essentially, destroyed. Their tokenomics were essentially destroyed by traditional liquidity mining programs, and the kind of dumping of tokens, and the vicious circle that creates, and the potential death spiral that can happen there. So it's really kind of all started as a way to, how can we provide a better level of support to these projects, and get them to a point where they don't need to rely on these ancient models, or ancient, but I guess suboptimal models of engagement and liquidity acquisition, in order to better focus on their product offerings and continue building, and not be so worried about the continuous downward sell pressure that they're facing from these traditional models.
I love it. Now, one part actually that, and I know I got right back into the rabbit hole with you. So before we move on and skip out a little bit more, one of the things I think is probably going to be one of the most slept on pieces of this is the NFT part, because what you then have as a result of this overall transaction, and it's a multi-step transaction, but what you have at the end of the day for the users is, not only are you supporting the project that you believe in, not only are you getting a discount obviously based on whenever you're listening, hearing this, watching this, it's going to be different. But you're getting a discount. Not only are you benefiting in a variety of ways, but then at the end of the day, you have this NFT, and that has real value. One, because it's totally cool and it just looks awesome, and I'm a huge fan. But it's an NFT, which means it is an asset. So, can you talk about kind of the long term thinking on the NFT itself and what happens with that? I mean, what's the plan with that? Is there a plan with that? And why should users be excited about that piece as well?
It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, honestly, for the most part right now, the main idea around the NFT is really, I guess, gearing up for what we feel is going to be the future of these types of fixed income products, where you look at kind of the traditional finance side of things, where for the most part, aftermarkets for these types of fixed income products are very, very common, and in fact tend to drive incredibly high levels of volume that we don't really see at this moment in the decentralized space. And overall, just realizing that no one else had really been able to, or hadn't up to this point, kind of wrapped these types of positions into NFTs and allowed them to become tradable. So at the moment, we're not seeing too much interest when it comes to actually trading, buying, and selling these NFTs, but we really wanted to make sure that we were ahead of the curve on that, and obviously allow that to happen, and kind of prepare for what we feel is going to be an explosion in demand there within the coming years, as more traditional finance ideas continue making their way into the decentralized space. Now, in terms of the actual NFTs themselves, once they kind of no longer become yield bearing, once the vesting period has elapsed or whatever it may be, the main idea there has really been to keep them as collectibles. Right now, the current art that you're seeing is I guess almost like V1 in a sense, where it's kind of a good way to be a part of ApeSwap's history and be, mark yourself as one of the early members and participants in the Treasury Bills program, or I guess users participating and engaging in the program. But beyond that, I think we're going to be introducing different kind of limited edition styles, potentially new and updated art styles with partners as well down the line. And for now, again, kind of keeping those as collectibles and kind of memorabilia for users that have participated, I guess, beyond the cool factor that you mentioned there as well, because they're pretty sweet. And so we're pretty excited about those as a whole.
They are mega sweet. And I will say that if we look back, and this, I'm not hinting at anything right now, but if you do look back in the history of the world of crypto, typically the people that got in and experimented with things early on, especially those that are getting NFTs as a byproduct of using products and experimenting and trying things out and supporting projects that you really like, typically later down the road you're happy that you did. Of course, there's no plan like that. This is not hinting at anything. I'm just suggesting that if we look at history, it's probably a good idea to support those projects that you really believe in and to participate when they're experimenting with new things, because the projects that are really good and really long term are going to, in my opinion, be more incentivized to be much nicer to people who supported them early, kind of your Genesis users of things. So just making a little observation of history and a slight suggestion. But anyways, dude, this is awesome. I love going into depth on this. And so I think we covered, and again, if I missed anything, let's circle back on it. I think we did a good job of covering the partnership thus far. I'm really just curious to to get more of your take on things. We talked about so many different pieces of this, and I'm just kind of curious about where you see really the future of this sort of technology and this sort of innovation. We touched on a lot of things, but just kind of the whole gist and feel and energy of the discussion. Like, where do you see this sort of innovation going in the future? And what can users be doing to prepare for this and to be on the leading edge of this innovation?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I guess to me, I take this question more as like a, where is the future of decentralized finance, and I guess more specifically, automated market makers? How is that going to progress? And for us at ApeSwap, it's something that we are constantly researching, constantly looking at what everyone else is doing in the market, and making sure that we are either staying ahead of the curve, building out innovative products, or at the very least, have these things on our radar, and being ready to, build, iterate on whatever we need, when we feel the time is right. But one of the biggest things that I'd say we've been taking a closer look at is overall capital efficiency. So typically, right now, in a V2 style AMM, it's not a very capital efficient model, right? You're seeing right now that the updated Uni V3 model, or even models like Balancer and a couple of others, are really doing an excellent job at the moment of capturing overall market share. And that's between decentralized finance and centralized finance as well, right? Uni V3, I believe a report came out pretty shortly actually that highlighted how through their concentrated liquidity models, they actually at times have had deeper liquidity profiles on Bitcoin and Ethereum than some of the leading centralized exchanges out there. And that's led them to really, really blow up and again, kind of capture, I mean, a tremendous percentage of today's decentralized market share. And I mean, it's just been crazy. The amount of fees that they're generating at the moment are just through the roof. And I mean, for us as DEX operators, it's really interesting to see how that's progressing, how, they kind of went from the release of Uni V3 where people weren't really using it so much. There was a lot of confusion and uncertainty in the markets. Uni V2 and other exchanges were still outperforming Uni V3 in terms of volume for at least a few months. I don't remember exactly the timeline there, but it took quite a bit of time for Uni V3 to start kind of slowly clawing their way up over Uni V2 and other models. And then, I mean, it's just ever since then has really exploded and kind of been exponential, the growth that we've seen there with them. And so from my perspective, kind of the main challenges that Uni V3 faced in terms of gaining some adoption there and some traction in the markets was really the complexity of the concentrated liquidity models and how difficult it is to manage those positions. And I think a lot of users and protocols alike had a really tough time trying to navigate those waters and getting these liquidity positions set up there. And I think a lot of people got liquidated or ended up with or losing all of their tokens on one side of that equation or the other. And today, I think the people that are really providing liquidity there and succeeding are more institutional investors and people who really have the time and knowledge to be able to micromanage these liquidity positions on a very consistent basis. So we're very interested in these models, and personally, I think the future of AMMs as a whole are going to be very much a crossover between the sustainable liquidity mining type of initiatives that we are spearheading at the moment, combined with these concentrated liquidity profiles and different models of AMMs, again like Balancer and Uni V3, which typically involve a lot more liquidity management and potentially treasury management as well. And so for us, beyond just building out some more concentrated liquidity models and potentially some more capital efficient DEX overall, which we're absolutely working on at the moment, I think where the industry is really trending is going to be, again, kind of unification of both of these ideas, and not only helping projects build up, protocol and liquidity, but helping them manage that liquidity as well, where, most builders in the space don't necessarily have this underlying DeFi knowledge, which, is getting more and more complex week over week. And I mean, if you're building a GameFi project, you don't necessarily need to have all that knowledge. And I think, being able to defer to experts in the space that have spent time kind of building these products, learning about them, developing them, will be an incredibly beneficial value add in the future, and hopefully will kind of become the norm as we have more of these protocols built up around GameFi, NFTs, metaverse, that again don't necessarily have this in-depth underlying knowledge or expertise of the field.
I love that. So I'm just kind of curious here because I feel like very few people talk about this really. But but the idea of, I mean, true partnerships between projects and pieces of infrastructure like exchanges like yourselves, do you see the future where there's a lot deeper integrations in like a true sense of natively integrating? Because in a way, what we've done here between our two projects is we've integrated in a way. Do you see deeper integrations between leading projects like what we have here as being what is going to set the different clusters within ecosystems apart? And how do you think that's going to take shape moving forward?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, 100%, right? And in our minds, the more integrated we can get in terms of all of our product offerings, whether that's the lending network, the farms that we have, the staking platform, the IDO platform that we have, and of course the Treasury bills product. For us, integration is kind of the name of the game. And again, being able to kind of create this environment where project owners and builders, who again don't have all this in-depth knowledge, can tap into, kind of an extension, in a sense, advisory services and consulting that directly kind of, like you said, integrates with everything that they're doing and provide a more seamless experience for their users and allow them to better, I guess, experience DeFi through that native token. I think is really going to be the name of the game. And for us, that's 100% what we're working on. Really becoming this one-stop shop where you can come to us, we can take a look at your tokenomics, ideally, before a project launches, and really be able to walk them through our entire product journey and give their users a comprehensive DeFi experience and let those guys, really focus on building their product, focus on what they do best and not worry so much about the current DeFi landscape and, providing kind of day one utility to their users within the DeFi landscape.
I love that. Now, this is another thing I'm curious about, because I think as the world matures and technology gets more sophisticated, different, and I'm thinking specifically within the world of trading, we're going to see a ton more, in my opinion. This is purely my opinion. I think we're going to see a lot more trading be done by different pieces of technology, like more algorithmic trading, and robot-based trading sometimes even with AI. Maybe not as intelligent, but just more robots trading, like basic DCA bots or things like that. Do you see a future where these sorts of trading software tools, I'm not going to name any specific names, but there are tools that, for folks who aren't as experienced with this stuff, you can go and you can use a piece of software that'll integrate with something that some sort of exchange, and then you can program the software to go do things for you on the exchange, and it can be really advantageous for you and open up a lot of doors. Anyways, mostly that's done right now with centralized exchanges. Do you see any sort of world where these sorts of tools would be able to be used with decentralized exchanges, and they're bringing over more sophistication and tools on the trading side that can then be integrated with decentralized exchanges in that really seamless native way?
100%. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think today, in the centralized landscape, I think a tremendous portion of that everyday volume is really effectively just bots being run. Whether that's just market makers doing their thing, or as you mentioned, users coming in and trying to squeeze as much value as they can from certain pairs. Yeah, I 100% think that we've already seen a lot of these participants kind of dipping their toes in the decentralized landscape. I know a ton of the bigger market makers are starting to experiment with decentralized exchanges as a whole. I know GSR has gotten involved. I think Wintermute has as well, and a few others. But yeah, no, to answer your question, I definitely think we're going to continue to see these kinds of applications continue to build up. I mean, it just makes sense. The kind of benefit of smart contracts and I guess the immutability there of those really allows for some unique integrations and kind of, I mean, so many different opportunities there. I think the kind of main barrier up to this point has been the trading fees associated with DEXs that are typically a lot higher, as well as the kind of slippage that's typically incurred from DEX trades, as liquidity profiles tend to be a bit, I guess, shallower than centralized exchanges. But as we continue to see UniV3 models and I guess just more concentrated liquidity models crop up and I guess continue to be better understood, I think we'll see a lot more integrations happening there that'll kind of open up those doors for more, I guess, just everyday users to be able to get involved. Whereas right now it's very much limited to power users and advanced users at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's going to be something that's really, really good for the industry as a whole, because I think it's going to give us all more tools and more access, which in my opinion is a really, really good thing. Like I want to
100%.
see the average ape have just as much access to really advanced functionality as some of the biggest hedge funds and blah 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 in the world, because I think we should all at least have an even starting line. And I think that's just part of the spirit and the ethos of crypto and blockchain. And it's also going to be better just for the world in general, because if everybody kind of has, from a tool set perspective, the ability to start from the same place, then what we're enabling is a meritocracy where those who are truly talented and those with the best ideas and those that have the real skill are able to create value in, proportionally, but able to create value and not be held back by lack of access to tools to be able to do things that they want to do.
I couldn't agree more. No, I love that thought process. And I mean, honestly, this is something that we've thought about a lot, especially in recent times. We actually just recently partnered up with Wallchain to release a bit of an update to our router, which has been super kind of exciting and different from what most people have done. For those who aren't familiar, for most trades that occur on chain, through any decentralized exchange, typically there are a lot of bots that actually watch all the swap events that are occurring on chain and analyze those events and tend to look for arbitrage and front running opportunities there. And I'd say on a very, very high percentage of trades that occur on chain, the user typically has a little bit of value extracted from them, and actually ends up in the pockets of these users running these bots, or institutions actually as well. But we just partnered with Wallchain to actually introduce a bit of an update to our router, where we're actually the ones who are now running one of these bots. And what we're doing is, essentially we're analyzing each swap that occurs on ApeSwap. And when we identify a swap that has a potential arbitrage opportunity, we run the arbitrage, give 30% of the profits from that arbitrage back to the user who initiated the trade directly. 20% goes to Wallchain, and then 50% goes to the ApeSwap DAO. And we really figured, users are doing this anyway. ApeSwap might as well take a cut so we can continue bettering our ecosystem. And then, of course, why not give a significant percentage of that as well back to the user who initiated the trade and kind of would have been left without any of that anyways.
That is incredible that y'all did that. I had no idea y'all were doing that. That is unbelievably smart. And I'm so glad that, one, y'all thought to do that, two, that you have executed on that, and three, that you decided to share a meaningful portion of that revenue back with users. I mean, that's incredible. This is exactly the kind of thing that to me is so exciting about the future of all of this. What we're doing is cool things like that. I mean, that does not, because the user doesn't see that anyways. Like they never see that. The average user, the average ape doesn't see that. But now they become 30% more profitable in essence. I don't know what the exact percentage is, but that 30%, that goes purely to the user's bottom line. But what it does is it also enables you guys and gals to get better, to be able to better serve the user. So it's a huge win. That's a huge win for the user. I love that. Kudos to y'all for thinking about that and executing on it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we're super excited about that one. I mean, exactly as you mentioned, it's I mean, it's just so cool. I mean, it's exciting, especially from the perspective of, a user doesn't have to do anything extra. He just hops in, initiates his trade, and he's automatically kind of eligible for this kickback there. So no, it's definitely a big step in the direction of kind of democratizing all these bots and kind of taking profit away from the few and redistributing it to the many.
I love it. Love it. Love it. Well, Julian, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know we've been pushing it. We're close to the hour here. I'm just kind of curious. One last question. Right now, we're in a really interesting time in the world of crypto and technology and the greater world, planet Earth, and the universe. What are your feelings as far as where is it going to be, like where are we going with this? And what I really mean, I'm not asking at all for any sort of price predictions at all. I think that's a horrible thing to do. But what I'm more trying to get a sense of, because you're in it, you're seeing what's going on, you're building, what's the general spirit and ethos of crypto, and where are we really going as an industry, as a community? Where do you see us moving towards in the future here?
Love this question. No, I definitely. I mean, I guess I want to start off by calling out a few things. I think right now we're effectively in a bit of a bear market. Obviously, the prices have taken quite the hit across the board. But I think a lot of people have accurately called out that this bear market feels significantly different than kind of the experiences a lot of us had back in 2017, 2018. And I think a big reason for that is just because of all of the developments that have happened since that time, right? We're in a position now where we've got hundreds, even thousands of crypto companies that have been established since 2018. All of these companies are continuing to build as best as they can. They have employees, they are paying salaries, and overall, we've got a lot more market participants at the moment and a lot more working products compared to, in 2018, where the extent of what you could really do with crypto was, buy, sell, trade, and invest in ICOs, right? Which were at the time really just a promise of something that, for the most part, really would never come. So from that perspective, I think this kind of difference there of having all these extra participants in the space that aren't going anywhere because they're living and breathing this stuff every day and continuing to build kind of regardless of market conditions. And then tying that in with utility across the board, whether that's strictly in the DeFi's landscape or NFTs that have kind of created this additional vector in which people have, I guess, just things to do within the crypto space. And obviously, people are continuing to build and develop and innovate. And yeah, so I think from that perspective, things have really become different and have really matured since the kind of 2017, 2018 era. And I think we're really just going to continue seeing that happen over the next few years. I mean, to me, the name of the game right now is getting to a point where, we're fully developing all these ideas that are right now kind of just scratching the surface of what crypto can do, and especially what DeFi can do. The last cycle at its peak, I believe DeFi market share in terms of, daily volume across various coins was about 4.5% at its peak. And right now, we're sitting around the 1% region. So, tons of room to grow for the DeFi space. And I think where the name of the game really comes down to is getting people involved in these applications, in these programs, in these dApps, in a way that they don't even know that they're actually getting involved with DeFi or getting involved in crypto. And I think that's really where we're headed to. And of course, along the way, we'll pick up plenty more power users, people who are interested in getting their feet wet and, owning their own wallets and being their own custodians, et cetera, et cetera. But fundamentally, I don't think everyone in the world is interested in being their own custodian of their own assets. And, most people, I would say, are probably not interested in, learning the history of Bitcoin and learning everything there is to know about crypto. So to me, true mass adoption, and really the future that we're all hoping for, is getting people to, use all these applications without realizing they're using them, and really having them kind of power the back end of everybody's daily lives, essentially, whether it's buying and selling music, or buying and selling property, or drawing up legal contracts. I mean, the list is pretty much endless. But yeah, again, I think that's really where we're headed towards, and hopefully we can pick up a lot more quality developers, participants in the market on our way there.
Amazing. Well, Julian, I want to thank you so much again for sharing some of your valuable time and coming on to speak with the community and speak with myself about this partnership between DappRadar and ApeSwap, and then this incredible innovation in the form of first protocol owned liquidity, your jungle bills, the NFTs, all of it's just fantastic on the liquidity mining side. And then we got a little bonus sneak peek into, some of this AMM stuff and kind of the future of DeFi, and what really you're seeing as far as who's going to win and what they're going to be doing in the form of building really good partnerships, integrating really tightly, bringing TradFi tools into the world of DeFi, and really democratizing access to these really, really powerful tools. And yeah, I just want to thank you again so much for coming on the show today, and tremendously grateful. Thank you.
Of course, man. No, thank you so much. Really appreciate you having me on. And, honestly, it was a really, really interesting conversation. Always a pleasure chatting on these topics, and definitely look forward to the next conversation.
Right on. And for everybody that wants to dig in more to the ApeSwap DappRadar partnership, just head over to the DappRadar blog, and we have an article about that. And you can learn all about it. You can figure out how to get involved. We have instructions step by step of how to do all this. And I would highly encourage you to go investigate and check it out and see if that is something that you want to participate in. Julian, thank you. Thank you very much. Everybody go follow Julian on Twitter, and go follow ApeSwap as well. Thank you again to everybody watching and listening, and I will see you all on the next episode.